Have your life narrated out loud by a dramatic voice, or have background music that matches your mood?
Is this audible to everyone else in my vicinity?
Yeah.
Wow. That's going to keep you accountable, eh? Shem picked his own nose and ate it.
But also, like, what's going on in your heart? Like, why is My Chemical Romance always playing, bro? Are you okay? I'm not okay. I'm not okay. Look, I think if it was for one day, I would pick the narration because I think that would be hilarious. Like, that would just be such a cool novelty, and it'll give everyone a laugh. But by the 12th day and the 12th year and so on and so forth, it's just going to start getting really ridiculous. And you can't do anything subtly as well. Sam gets up at 2 a.m. and he tiptoes to the kitchen to get a slice of pizza. It's like, bro, we don't need to know this. Like, don't call me out, man. Like, so yeah, I'm going to go with the music. The music would be cool. The thing that would be a little scary about the music is if it's reflecting your mood, if it becomes kind of like cyclical in a sense where I'm not feeling super good, bad music starts playing, and then the bad music makes me feel bad, and I can't get out of that loop, right? That's the only scary thing about that is like if the music actually starts to define my mood, not just reflecting it, but actually starts setting my mood, you know? But I'm going to go with music anyway, because I always have a song going in my head. I'm often tapping out a beat, so it'll be less imagined and more real.
But I guess you can't pick the tune, right? You can't pick the genre. This could be horrible if I'm walking around with Taylor Swift in my head or something. This is...
Yeah, but you might teach yourself how to like impact your mood and attitude better. If that's what's going on, you might actually learn a few things about kind of mental health and like, you know, your own attitude and stuff. Like, actually, I don't want to be listening to this really emo depressing song. I want something uplifting and fun, and then the Wiggles start playing, and you know,
like Hanson comes on.
Bop.
Wiggles.
Don't get too happy, man. Happy music's lame, right?
You got to like stay on that line, right? Of not like too dark, but like still sounds good, you know.
Reflective, right?
Yeah.
How active is this narrator? Like, if you just decide to do nothing, as you're like, he's still doing nothing. Like, how often to the next update of, and now he's still doing nothing. Shem begins to snore. Like, how much is he narrating?
I mean, I think he's narrating the interesting things, right?
Just the highlights.
All right.
Okay, I see.
So if you want a quiet day, just do nothing.
I don't know, maybe. I think like we're all used to so much background music in movies. I don't know if the music thing would actually be that weird, you know? People would get used to it because we're already used to watching people like in movies and then there's just this background music, right? And it's just normal. They're having a conversation and there's music in the background.
Yeah, if it's just a cinematic track rather than like pop songs and whatever else, if it's just like the mood, the feeling, swelling and crescendos, then I'm all for that. That'd be pretty awesome.
Yeah.
It'd feel pretty epic the whole time.
Totally. And the moment when Shem wins the Spiel des Jahres, the like victorious music starts playing and everyone starts crying, like giving a speech.
Been there and haven't done that so far. Yeah.
Still time. Yeah, I think music's the easy answer, isn't it? Because I think the narration, as you say, would get tiresome. It'd be fun, but you wouldn't want that for your whole life. It would just get really annoying.
Unless, have you watched Puffin Rock?
No.
It's this kids show. It's narrated by what's his name? He's Roy from IT Crowd, the Irish comedian.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And you give me an Irish narrator, a soothing male Irish voice, and I'm
suddenly your life's just funnier.
I might pick that. yeah, exactly. That'd be pretty good. I could probably do that.
Dude, This show is so highly rated, 8.6 on IMDb. Do you recommend?
I've got taste. What can I say?
Welcome to the Lens and Veil podcast. Join Shem, Sam, and Zach as they dive into a designer-focused analysis of Through the Ages, a new story of civilization by Vlaada Chvátil.
So today we'll be diving in and discussing an older game. The first edition came out, I think, in 2006, and there's a newer version came out more recently. And this is Through the Ages, a game by Vlaada Chvátil from CGE fame. This is probably one of the oldest Civ games out there and has probably inspired quite a lot of more modern Civ games. At the very least, it's one of the earliest Civ games that didn't rely on a map. So it kind of takes away the 4X element of building up an army, moving across the terrain and invading your lovely friends. So this game is very much built on a card kind of engine. You are acquiring a variety of different cards. We have wonders, we have leaders, we have various technologies, such as increasing your farm and your religion and your culture and all sorts of things. You're getting units, you're building sort of formations, tactics with your units, and you are increasing your population, gathering food, all for the glorious points, which in this game are culture. So the game has a lot going on. We can dive into it pretty soon, but a kind of broad overview of how it works. On your turn, you're going to have a number of actions. The game kind of slowly ramps up in the first 2 turns, but once you get going, you start with 3 civil actions and 2 military actions. And if you acquire new forms of government or other action cards or things that can give you benefits, those numbers can change. But generally, most of your turn is about using your civil actions. And the things you're doing with these actions are acquiring new cards to your hand or picking up wonders to start construction on from this kind of long, very long market of cards, like a river where they get cheaper towards the left and more expensive towards the right, and they'll be constantly flowing down from turn to turn. You'll be using your actions to play down some cards that you picked up previously. You'll be using them to build new technologies, to add new population to your available pool, and then to also use that population to increase your income in various ways, such as getting more food, more people, or maybe not more people, more food, more culture, more science, and all sorts of things from turn to turn. You're managing your food resource, which is going to be something you want to try and get onto your cards, but also spend fairly quickly, because if you hold on to it, there's corruption which is going to come to the game. All sorts of things you do with your actions, and it's quite tight in that kind of way. You only have so many actions and you want to use them wisely. But you also have these 2 starting military actions, which for the most part you use just to add new military units or to add a new tactics, which is a way of kind of buffing certain combos of units. But the kind of cool part is that if you don't use these, they're going to allow you to draw military cards to your hand, which have a variety of different things going on, such as initiating war or attacking other players. They are these tactics cards that you need, all sorts of fun stuff that they can create and do. But your turn is essentially to play out your actions as much as you want, and then you're going to run through a series of production steps where you kind of check for corruption, check for unhappy workers, then produce, and all this sort of thing going on. The cards will slide down, and then it's the next player's turn. The game also has 3 ages, or 4, I think, technically, where the game starts out in this kind of very early human era, Stone Age almost, and then it quickly moves into the first age. The kind of idea of this, like a lot of Civ games, is that each age kind of ramps up and new technologies come out, the cards get stronger, and you kind of want to keep leveling up as you go, because if you stay in the early age with your little swordsman, then by the final age you're facing off against jets and tanks and all sorts. So you kind of have to keep up with everybody else and keep up with the age. There is a intro game, and we did actually play it, me and Sam, I think, in person. Or did we play the full game? I can't quite remember.
Play the full game, yeah.
We played the full game. I think I have played the intro game once before, though, where it kind of doesn't do the full scoring mode at the very end. You skip the final phase, and that is just a slightly easier game to get into, and I would definitely recommend it for your first game, especially if you're playing in person. But the full game has the kind of big end scoring thing where you're trying to play these event cards down for final scoring. But most of your points, most of your culture is gained as a form of income. And that's kind of the interesting part of this game, is that it's really a balance of how to build your engine and what incomes are your priority. Are you wanting to get more food? Are you wanting to get more culture, more science? Because you will find if you focus too heavily on one, you're going to be extremely imbalanced in the others. So yeah, that's a broad overview. What do we want to jump into first, discussing this big, complex game?
It's very good. Thanks, Shem. What do we want to talk about first? So we want to talk about the card market, how the cards come along and how they cost a different number of action points based on where they are in the card row. I don't know if I've seen this done before. I think it's a really clever way of giving players more information and allowing players to jump ahead and take something that they really, really want but they're going to have to essentially give up 2/3 or 3/4 of their turn if they want to pay a big amount. What do you guys think about how this card system works?
Well, we've seen it a lot in games where it's like 5 or 6 cards, right? Like there's a very minimal market and it's usually quite a steep ramp. It'll be like, well, this card's free. And then it goes like 1, 1, 2, 3, 3, 4, something kind of upwards where no one's buying that last card. It's just information. But this one has something like 12 to 15 cards on offer. And they just go from 1, 2, and then 3. So it is different than what we've seen in that kind of way. And I wonder how much this game inspired a lot of the modern games we see using this kind of river mechanism.
Yeah, totally. I agree that we've seen it lots before, but I think the thing that was refreshing to me, even though this is an older game, it's newish to me, was that we're not using a currency to buy these. The currency we're using is our action points, whereas normally it's like it'll take an action to buy a card and then the cost is going to be some form of money or something like that. But actually, like using your action points on your turn felt kind of cool. It felt refreshing to use your action points as a currency here.
Yeah, and I think like even though there's these really expensive cards that it's kind of at the beginning of the game, you're probably not going to waste your whole turn gaining a card from the beginning of the river, right? But as you get on in the game, you can kind of create engines around having heaps and heaps of action points. And that could be a thing that you go into, and then you might not be able to use all those action points on upgrading your stuff because you don't have the other resources to do that, but you can use it on sniping the cards before other people and stuff like that. So there's quite a lot of different ways that you could play the game that also allows for being like, some people might be going for those early cards. Some people might be sniping them before they come down to you, and you're waiting for them to cost 1, and they're not going to get there.
There's also a thing in the game where you don't always use all of your action points, and it doesn't actually feel that bad as well. So quite often you'll have certain things you want to achieve in your turn. Like, I want to upgrade this farm and then hopefully play down this technology card or whatever it might be. Like get 1 more military strength so I'm not at the bottom of the stack. So often you might actually just have 1 leftover action point anyway, which I think helps kind of soften the blow of taking a 3 action point card because, well, maybe you weren't going to use that last point anyway, so why not go from 2 to 3 or 1 to 2? So yeah, it doesn't feel like a massive sacrifice a lot of times. And if you're spending, like you said, your entire turn early on for a 3 action point card, it's probably worth it. There's probably a reason you're doing it because it's probably from the next age, or it's like it's that first upgrade to a farm you've seen, or that certain card that everyone keeps their eye out for early game. There's also like duplicates, right? So we're not just fighting for very unique cards. There's the same cards will come out, I think especially at higher player counts. So sometimes you're like, well, I'll just let that one go and I'll try and get the next one. And you get that timing of you can see them coming down. You know how many cards are getting removed from turn to turn roughly. So you can kind of know, oh, actually, I could risk this. I see that big 3 come out. Maybe by my next turn, no one else has grabbed it. So it has a little bit of a kind of wait and see, push your luck kind of vibe to it too.
On the control of the river, though, when you play in 4-player, there can be turns that just it gets like wiped out. Like things just, if a card's in that 3rd spot, it might even get deleted before it comes to your turn because so many cards have been bought. So, it's kind of interesting. You can in some way have a little bit of like, be like, yeah, that card's I'm probably going to have a chance to buy that again, but it's not guaranteed at the same time. So there is a bit of pressure like on your turn. If you see a card you want, this is the time that you're guaranteed to be able to get it. Otherwise, your next turn, it just either someone else could have bought it or it could have even just been wiped out from the river, just according to how many people have been spending. So
the other thing about the card market is that because there are so many different types of cards, we've got technologies, we've got buildings, we've got wonders, we've got leaders, we've got governments, we've got kind of the immediate effects, that the distribution of the market can vary a lot over the course of the game. And that can lend a certain flavor to the kinds of strategies you pursue based on what are available. And you'll really notice, like, sometimes, where are these government cards? What? I need to find a government. And you're sitting there in Age 3. Everyone's got tanks and stuff, and you've got despotism, like, you're still just like an Age A government. I remember playing a game with Shem where, like, the government cards just weren't coming out for him at the right times. And so wasn't really able to level up the government and get more civil actions and stuff like that. We talked about this on other podcasts as well, about the randomness that a deck of cards can create. And in this game, I do think you see every card, but the order in which these cards come out really, really change the flavor and texture of the game, and you have to be able to adapt to what's available. So that creates a lot of room for skill expression and stuff like that. But also it can lead to frustration, right?
Yeah, it can. I think one thing that does well to alleviate the frustration that could come from the draft are those yellow action cards. These are not cards that in any other game you'd take. They're just like opportunity cards. Like, oh, if you take this now, then when you do this thing next turn, it's cheaper. Like that kind of stuff. They're not that exciting. They're not like game breaking in any way, but the amount of times that you have one action point left or two action points left and you go, well, I may as well take an action card because it'll help me next turn. But imagine if they weren't in the game. Like every card was this big cost technology or a new government or a new leader. The market would be quite boring and quite stale, and you wouldn't really pick up cards so much because you can't afford them. You can't afford to use them. You can always pick them up, I suppose, but those yellow cards really are doing a lot of favors for the game, I think. Because, those moments when, there's no government and I want a government, but well, at least I can use my turns to get these cards, and maybe next turn I can get a government and save something on my farm I upgrade next time. So they kind of keep hope alive a bit for you your next turn as well.
The other types of cards are the combat cards, I think, or the event cards. I'm not sure what they're called, but there's the cards with the green back. Wait, are they even green back? I'm sorry.
I think they're all combat cards. Yeah.
Yeah. So the other cards are the combat cards, and there's lots of different varieties of these as well. There's tactics, there's territories, military bonus cards, events, aggressions, wars, packs. There's all sorts of different things. They have different effects. Some of them are like little kind of response cards where if someone attacks you or a fight for a colony shows up, you can play them to increase your strength and things like that. Others are just purely aggressive, kind of take that cards that players can get an opportunity to defend against them, but if they don't, then you get to steal something from them. And each of these cards will, well, not each of them, some of these cards will take a red action to spend. Some of these cards you can spend at the start of your turn, but you can play them at the start of your turn to trigger them, the political phase. What do you guys think about this whole deck of cards and how this whole system works? Because it seems to me like it's one of the main ways to actually get points in the game.
Yeah, I've got mixed feelings on this deck of cards. I think the other deck, like, it's cool. There's lots to discover. Like we said, there's so many ways they can come out, orders they come out to kind of change up game to game. These cards, I feel like the main thing that they're for are the events. Like, the event system is quite interesting. You essentially, before you take your actions in this politics phase, you can choose to play an event card face down on this pile. That's going to seed a future event, but then also reveal the next event in the queue. And if you've been paying attention, you might know what that event is if you're the one that played it down. It's quite an interesting system, and those events start out fairly neutral, like everyone gets 2 food, or everyone gets a free worker, or then eventually it's like, oh, the player who's the strongest gets this thing, or then maybe there's a fight for a territory. We do this kind of bidding, blind bidding, or I think the original game was kind of go round and round, kind of upping and upping to try and gain control of a territory. That stuff's so interesting to me. Like the territories especially, there's this opportunity to kind of spend your military strength to gain more stuff, right? But the downside is that a lot of the other events that you can play actually benefit you from having a lot of military. So there's this nice sort of push and pull of trying to be the strongest, but also know when to jump on things. There's also the tactics cards. They're cool. They allow you to like get more strength out of your units by having certain patterns of units or combinations. They're also in that deck. The other ones are the aggressions, the wars, and the packs. Now, the packs we didn't really see because it's only 3+ players they come into play. And I think we had one 3-player game, and I don't think we even played one. So they're these negotiation cards where you kind of offer up, like, let's join a pact. I'll get this benefit. You get this benefit. We don't attack each other. So we didn't really see them in play, so I can't really comment too much on them. But the wars were pretty brutal. You can pretty much trigger a war, and then if the other player can't meet your strength by the end of the next turn, then you kind of ravage them. And then the aggressions were kind of tamer versions of that, where you play an aggression, the player can respond with cards that are in their hand to try and meet up the difference in strength. If they can defend, then nothing happens. It's just cancelled out. Whereas the wars, whoever wins it gets quite a big benefit, taking stuff from the other player, that kind of thing. I kind of get it, like thematically, why they're in there. But this deck doesn't feel quite as like kind of refined, or in a way it's trying to do too much stuff, I think, in my mind. There's too many different types of cards, and how you draw those cards can be kind of frustrating. So if you have a game where all you see is aggression cards, you're like, well, I guess, and you're the weak player, you're like, well, what do I do with this rubbish? So like, but if you get all the
Yeah.
event cards, it's like, wow, this is fun because I can keep playing these events, I keep getting benefits, and I know they're coming, and so it's a little bit mixed for me on that deck of cards. Let's see you nodding your head about that, Zach.
Yeah, I think I totally agree. And for example, I really love that colony system, like you said, where it's like you can put these colony event cards inside the deck, and when they come out, then it's suddenly everyone's got a bid on them. Maybe the person who's got the most military power can win it if they want, but they might end up being the person with the least, or they go down, they're spending that military power to gain this colony. But then the deck includes these cards that just give you like bonus military power for those bidding phases. And it's like, feels like it's kind of undoing what the whole tension's supposed to be about giving up your permanent military power to be able to get these colonies. So like something like that, I'm like, it's okay, but it felt like that's a nice tension. And then someone could just hold on to a bunch of those cards and just stay on top of the military power and win the bid, Feels like it's kind of contradicting itself. And yeah, I had a game where I was like the bottom of the stack in terms of military power, and yeah, all those aggression cards, those war cards, it's just like this is useless. Like, I don't want this. Anytime I had to discard stuff, I was just discarding aggressions. It feels a bit more, well, the other cards you're seeing in River and you're picking cards. These cards you're just randomly drawing cards. So that's the difference, right? And the other one, you've got a bit of choice. Sure, there's a bit of randomness in how they come out, but you can see like 12 cards or whatever it is. With these ones, it's just the luck of the draw. Whatever you get, you get. And I think that's kind of the frustration.
Players do have a level of control if they change their government or develop, I think it's technologies, the blue cards, that allow them to have more military actions. And I think a really clever thing with this game is the way that they handle hand limits, where your number of military actions will depict how many cards you can hold of that type. And the same thing with your civil actions, how many cards you can hold. I think it's just a really kind of clean system that makes a lot of sense. But if you're behind and you cannot find a government to level up your military, you're drawing fewer military cards per round than other players. And the cards are supposed to like help you to catch up. And if you're not getting any tactics cards that help you defend yourself, it could spiral into someone just completely getting beat down. And the other thing with the aggression cards in the multiplayer game, say with 3 players, it makes the most sense to attack the weakest player. It's like, why would you attack the second strongest player? Just attack the weakest player. Just bully that person. And so it could lead to really frustrating experiences for someone who is behind. But like all of that is frustrating. But I do also want to say that this deck of cards does a great job of adding tension to the game and adding focus to the game. And if you like being stressed in games, stress isn't fun, but like in some games, being on the edge of your seat, being like, oh my goodness, I really hope someone doesn't attack me. Just give me one more turn to level up my military. That deck of cards does that beautifully. Hate it or love it, it does. And the game's economies are already demanding so much of the player, like level up your happiness, gain more workers, upgrade your buildings and all of that sort of thing. But then when you add to that, not just managing your economy, but also leveling up your military so that you can defend yourself or prepare yourself to be able to take a colony, definitely adds a good amount of tension to the game, like an insane amount of tension to the game, which is exciting and frustrating. It's 2 sides of the same coin, I think.
Speaking about that, though, I feel like the luck of the draw of those cards can be pretty important, because I had a game where I was the highest strength out of everyone, and I didn't have the same cards that when I was the lowest strength, the other people played against me, where it was like war for culture. They took culture off me, not only a set amount, but also for how much strength ahead they were. And it's like, wow, if I had had that in that other game, it would have been really good, but I didn't. But in the game where I was the lowest, so I think those sorts of frustrations can come just because of that randomness of the draw. And so the higher strength can matter more in certain games than in other games, right? Just because of what plays out. I do agree, though, that it adds like a huge tension, because this game is really pulling you in so many different directions. And I think that's the reason it appeals to a lot of people, is because it is so tricky to get that balance right, because you're always being pulled like, oh, but now your age 1 leader has disappeared. You need to get another leader. And so, like, oh, no, I need to search for another leader. Oh, but there's a wonder there. Oh, I don't have a wonder at the moment. I should build a wonder. oh, but I'm not getting enough food income, so I need to upgrade. I need to get the irrigation card or whatever so that I can upgrade my food building. It's like there's just so many things that you need to work on that you could work on. Like it's just so vast that actually managing to navigate that is just it's a really hard puzzle. And then you have these kind of player interaction parts which are coming into it. It's like there's an arms race, right? Because the military strength thing is you can have a game where everyone's just like not building up their military strength and everyone's hovering around like 4 or 5 strength and it's like no one's too worried, right? But suddenly when you get the game where there's someone that's like on 40 strength, it's like if you're on 10 strength, you're screwed, because if that person attacks you, they're just gonna annihilate you. And so there's this very like arms race kind of feeling, which is kind of realistic and thematic, right? Where it's like if someone's going hard into military, you suddenly have to pivot and also go reasonably hard into military to keep within reach of them at least, even if you're not trying to go above them, but keeping within a few military points with them. So I think that's quite cool and thematic as well, where there is that really big feeling. If everyone's being nice, then you don't need to worry about it. But if someone goes super aggressive, you need to as well.
You guys think that this game tries to implement rubber banding in any way?
I think the main way it addresses it, I was just thinking through before, was how what we talked about with the river of cards. If someone goes heavy into military from the very start, they've got a bunch of maybe knights, but more likely just soldiers or spearmen, whatever they are, and they've invested a lot of like population and food into getting those units. The next player who's now falling behind, they might get first dibs on the first like artillery card that comes out or something. So this is a much better military unit. The price for what you get for strength is far better. So that player kind of has a higher jumping in point than the player who started out down there. So that does kind of allow you to keep in the game. So even if you didn't invest early into military, maybe you took some hits early on, when that big card comes out, you've got just as much skin in the game, if not more, to then get that card and use it than the other player, because the other player's already committed so many units to a different type of,
right?
Different military unit that has a different effect or less strength. So, yeah, I think it does. It does in a way, but you can't get around the fact that this is, quite a mean game. So it is older in that way, and it's not going to be as forgiving as, say, modern Euro games are, or even just modern any kind of games are all the time. This game does feel dated in that way, where it's like there's take that, there's nastiness, but it does feel strategic in that way, where you do actually have to read the table, you have to know what's going on. You can't just have your head down doing your thing. So it's of its age, I guess, and you have to kind of go into it knowing that it's not going to be this, very friendly cooperative experience at the table where you just get to build your little engine, have fun, and see how you do the end. So you can't ignore the military. But like Zach was saying, it is kind of based on the group. So if everyone ignores it, then that's fine. But if everyone gets heavy into it, then you've got to keep up. Otherwise, you probably will get quite wrecked. But there is still room there for expression and different paths for sure.
I kind of respect a game that's like 3 hours, that the main response, I think, to someone who is behind and losing is get good. Like, yeah, there's a little bit of rubber banding and stuff, but it pretty much is just like, well, start again, play again, and get good. Like, because I don't know. We just see so many games with rubber banding, right? And I like to put it in games as well, because I don't like playing games with players who are checked out, who have lost all hope, who do not want to keep playing because they're down and out. Now, some people are really good sports and they don't complain at all, and they're happy playing games when they're losing. But there are a few, and it can just ruin a game experience for other players as well. We've talked about this before. But having said all of that, like, it is quite refreshing to see a game that doesn't care too much about rubber banding. It doesn't have any of those Mario Kart type mechanisms going on. You really just need to like lock in and try to do your best to salvage your game and get stronger. So I don't know. I respect it. It's kind of cool.
The forms of rubber banding are more like for the player themselves. So if a player's got a lot of population or a lot of production, then those costs get higher and higher to keep getting better. So
that's right. That's true.
If you have a lot of population out there, your next one costs more and more food. If you're overproducing your stone and your food, then you're going to get corruption and lose some of that production. So whereas the player
who's get more happiness as well.
Yeah, the player falling behind has a cheaper way to get into to catch up, I guess. So it's more of the headwinds kind of thing, where the player at the front has more resistance. They're going to be finding it harder to get better, where the other players have a chance to catch up because their costs are much lower.
Yeah, good point.
So for me, the main cool mechanical thing of this game are the sounds kind of sad, but the little cubes, the little blue and yellow cubes. I love them. No, but this is kind of the magic source of why the tension and the economies and the balancing is such a good puzzle for this game, and why it's so hard to even master, even after playing it multiple times. I think I've played this game like 15 times now because of the app, and I still don't know how to play well. I still get myself into corners where I'm like, how did I get here? Why do I not have any food? Why do I not have this? And it's just a hard puzzle to solve. Maybe it's just me, but I really struggle with it, and I still really enjoy playing it because it's one of these kind of unknown mysteries to me, is how to actually play well. And we were talking about it earlier with the AI on the app version of the game, and how well that AI can wallop you even at the lower levels. And you leave the game going, why am I so bad at this game? Like, how do I get better? And like, I'm slowly getting better. I was slowly beating the kind of the lowest one, and the next one kind of got stuck in the middle. But this cube system. So you need population, right? You need these yellow cubes to essentially, they act almost like a building for you. They might be a farm. Think of it like it's a group of people who are manning a farm, or they might be out there in the ironworks making stone for you. They might be in the university creating culture, or they might be in the temple making religion, making science, whatever it is, or they might be putting you as units for military units. And you want them because they allow you to get more stuff. They increase your production. But then you have to get food to pay to get more people. So if you go too heavy into making more and more stone to make more and more buildings, then suddenly you have no food to buy more workers, and you get this weird kind of imbalance of your economies. So you really want to have a decent amount of food, a decent amount of stone, but then all that gives you nothing. Like, you don't get points for that stuff, right? And generally speaking, you don't get points having lots of stone, lots of food. You want to get science, which is another resource which you get as income, to then play out better technology cards to improve your systems. But even that's not giving you points. You want to get culture, which is the main thing of the game. So you want to get culture to generate these points from turn to turn. But if you only do that, then you're going to fall behind on your econ. So it's a really interesting balance. And the fact that it's just these two different colored cubes that really drive the entire thing is quite genius.
Yeah, there's so much going on with these cubes. I just mirror your thoughts exactly. There's a lot to kind of praise about this whole system. And one of the things is that it's what we call in game design lingo is gates. There's so many gates in this game. And what we mean by gates is not the things that you build in Ezra and Nehemiah, though those are gates in games, but it's kind of resistance that the game is offering players. It's so that player can't just go, right, I'm going to take this, do this, and just feel like they can do anything on their turn. If you can do anything on your turn and kind of achieve everything you want really easy with no resistance, then actually that doesn't provide much satisfaction, right? There's a lot more satisfaction into having some resistance and then managing to kind of overcome that resistance and achieve your goals in spite of all the kind of pressure the game is offering you. So we've got resistance in terms of your population, right? Like, increasing your population requires that you have the food, but then once you do that enough, then you need to have more happiness. So then you need to have some resources to place these population cubes in places where they will generate you happiness, so that you could then create more population, to create more resources, to create ideas, to eventually hopefully get someone into a place where you can generate culture. And so it's insanely finely tuned, and you have this constant puzzle of how you want to balance this eco, as Jem has said. And the thing that I love about it is that every turn you get this constant feedback, because every turn you generate resources. So that feels great. You get to see how your engine is doing every single turn. I'm going to generate ideas. I'm going to generate culture. I'm going to generate stone, iron, whatever it's called, food. Fantastic. So you get that feedback. You feel like your engine is humming along, which is great. So in that sense, it's really fast and quick. But what you learn is that even though you generate resources quickly, you cannot quickly rebalance. It's kind of like steering your ship, right? You can start to see, oh no, I am underproducing food. But you can't quickly just pivot that. You're going to actually need to increase your happiness. You're going to need to gain some more stone so that you can get them producing food. And so it's like, even though you're getting this feedback really fast from your resources, it takes a long time to get your ship turned in the correct direction, unless you foresee it at the start and you balance it perfectly from the start, which is a super hard thing to do. But it makes it satisfying to think that it might be possible in theoretical land that you could balance your economy correctly in this game. Have you guys ever experienced it?
I think the great thing that happens is that like there are solutions to all these things, but then you need the right cards as well, because sometimes you realize that you've got an overbalance, you've got way too much stone, and you're like, oh man, if I had a wonder, I could build that wonder to get rid of the stone, because you don't want your resources to be taken away by corruption, because essentially, like, if all your blue cubes are out on the board, if you don't use them before the end of the turn, you're going to lose like 4 of them.
Yeah.
So that's just so inefficient. You're like, I produced 4 stuff that I'm not even going to get to use. So you're like, man, I want to use this stuff before the end of my turn. But if you don't have enough science points to upgrade one of your building types and suddenly put your people into better buildings, because essentially if you upgrade the building type, then the cube at that building is worth more. And so you can spend your stone in that way by moving your population who's already working in the stone mines, moving them up to the iron mines or whatever. So that's one way to spend stone. But maybe you don't have the science points to upgrade that. So you're like, oh man, can I find a wonder in the river? And then maybe the wonder's not there. So you're like, oh man, how am I going to get rid of this iron? So you do really notice those imbalances. There are ways that you can like kind of use those, but you have to have foreseen that. You have to have been like, okay, my economy's going too heavy into iron. Maybe I'll pick up a wonder so that I can spend that iron as I try and like balance the other part of my economy so that I'm not wasting those resources. Because that's the thing, is in the min-maxer inside you just is like hurting, because you're like, oh my goodness, I'm going to lose 2 or 4 stone right now. It sucks.
So we like to talk a lot about kind of motivations for players in games. And, I've already said that you're generating resources at the end of every turn, so that feels great. And so there's motivation to level up your economy every turn because you get that constant feedback. But the other thing that you just mentioned, Zach, and Shem mentioned earlier, was that the corruption, like you're going to lose resources if you hold on to too many. And I actually love this for what it does for the player's psychology, because the game could have done something like what a lot of other games have done in the past, where they just simply say, hey, you can't hold more than 10 resources on your turn. Just chucking a limit on there. And instead they just say, no, there's no limit. Well, there's a limit of the number of possible cubes, but that's a lot. There's not really a limit to the number of resources you can hold. Hold on to as many as you like, but we're going to take some of these away from you because you're getting corrupt, you're hoarding too much. And I think that's really cool. If a player wants to hold more than they're supposed to, they can. It's cool. It gives agency. But players will do dumb things to not lose stuff. Players do not like losing stuff. And so it's playing on that psychology. If you could hoard your resources and say you really needed 8 stone to do a particular thing that's going to be really good for your economy, what you would do is you would just hold on to your 4 stone, generate 4 more stone in the next turn, and then you could do the thing in the right order and be the most efficient. But what this corruption system leads you to do is it leads you to finding a way to spend those resources each turn, which means that it might take you like 5 turns to be able to do this 8 stone thing instead of the 2 turns that you would have done if you could do it in a vacuum in the order that you really wanted to do it in. So it's applying so much pressure on the player to spend their resources each turn. They got to figure it out, and they can't just sequence things in the exact order that they normally would want to do, right?
Yeah.
It definitely makes the puzzle a lot harder in terms of, like, as you said, if you could hoard all your resources, you could then have planned out how you were going to upgrade all your buildings, how you're going to get your people. Like, you could have it all worked out in your head. I'm not saying you can't, but it makes it a lot harder to do that. I'm sure there's some really great players of this game who do that and are able to, they know how many cubes is going to give them corruption, etc. That's not to mention all the events that are being thrown in that are maybe taking away blue cubes or yellow cubes because you were the weakest person in military,
Yeah, the game keeps throwing kind of stuff at you. So it could be what feels random, like the events. So you think you've got it all planned out and then suddenly an event drops on you. Or maybe you play an event because it was like, oh, this is just going to help me later. But then it's just the bait that the game gives you on that market. Like, oh, that leader. If I get that leader, that's going to help me heaps, like in 2 turns' time. So it's constantly baiting you to do things that you didn't plan for. And they're like, yes, they're good, but they're also distractions. So like, it's a good thing for game design where like, you have this puzzle which might feel solvable. This game definitely isn't, but you have this extreme optimization puzzle. And a great way to kind of mix up the game, I think, for players is to add distractions, which come in the form of like tasty opportunities, right? Where they're like the smart player thinks they got it figured out, and then they go, "Oh, what's this though? What's this thing you could have? You could have this thing if you want." And they probably shouldn't take it, but it just looks too good and they want to take it. So this game does that a lot.
I like that thought of games that offer distractions, to players. I think that's really interesting. And one of our games I think we tried to do this was Architects, where, the goal of the game is to score points. And the main way you do that is gathering resources, gather resources, and then build those buildings and generate points. But because there's this capturing system and other things going on, you could be sitting there thinking, okay, I need 3 more stone and then build this building. But then someone captures your workers, puts 6 of them in jail, and there's 2 people at the black market, and there's 1 more spot for the black market to reset. And you're thinking, this black market is going to reset soon, so I need to urgently free these workers before I get penalized. So you go and free those workers, right? And then over the course of a few more turns, a whole bunch of tax gets added to the tax stand, and you're thinking, I could build this building to score points, which is what I'm supposed to do. But there's 10 coins in the tax stand right now. If I don't take them now, I won't get them. So you're distracted, you go and take those coins. And the game offers kind of all these little, distractions, I guess is the right word for players to, hey, you're supposed to do this thing, but do you want to do this as well, or instead of this other thing? And I've played a few games of Architects where I've stopped after about 5 turns, just thinking to myself and being like, I actually haven't furthered my position at all in these last 5 turns. What am I doing? And I think that's great.
It's when you manage to mix the strategy and tactics in a good way, right? Because people have their strategy, they're trying to work towards their goal, and then they see this tactical play. They're like, well, maybe that doesn't completely help my strategy, but it's a good play. It's just good. or it seems good, it's appealing. So I think the tax stand is definitely one of those things in Architects. There's so many funny moments where you're just seeing like coins pile up, and it's like, who's going to take it? Like, who's going to grab it?
Yeah.
Is no one taking it? It was kind of like, there's those chicken moments where it's like, are people waiting for more coins to be in there? Can they take the 2 corruption hits? So yeah, I think that's kind of fun in games where there's those sorts of like moments, those sorts of like one-off plays that you can do.
And I think that's kind of tied closely to that limited time offer kind of feeling. So that could come through interaction, like the tech stand, where if I don't take it, there's 3 more players after me, which probably will take it. Or even in, say, like Through the Ages, or a game with a kind of flowing river, even if it was a solo game, that thing that you kind of like is going to drop off at some point. It's going to disappear. So there's that limited time feeling. So it's like, well, I better do it now because I might not get the chance again. Like, it's a good tension it adds. But yeah, it's often from interaction, I think, that comes in, really. Like games where there's good interaction where you think, well, if I don't take it, they will. Like, there's such good distractions. They can just ruin your strategy completely. But you feel like, well, it's worthwhile to deny that person the thing and have it for myself. But really, is it really better? Like, it's hard to really, you can't figure it out in the moment, right? You can't figure it out. So that's kind of why it's fun.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point, right? It's like we want there to be things in our games that people can't figure out, right? Because once you figure something out, you're probably done with it. Isn't that right? I don't know, at least for me, if I feel like I've figured out a game, I'm probably a lot less likely to play it unless it's a game with heavy interaction. Then I'm like, well, that's why I would play games with heavy interaction, because you can't figure other people out very well. It's kind of hard to figure out completely what other people are going to do. Other people are the most unpredictable part of the experience, right? So that's why sometimes, yeah, unless you're good at reading people. But that's why often these really heavy interaction games are the ones that people come back and play again and again. Is because of that, right? Because every different opponent you play against is a different experience. And so I guess in the game design itself, how are we able to kind of make these things that are hard for people to figure out? Because then the puzzle itself is going to draw people in again and again, right?
For sure. And Through the Ages is definitely a game that I have not figured out after multiple plays.
Not even slightly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so is that driving the replay value for you guys? Would you say that pursuit of mastery with this game?
Definitely. I've played lots of different ways. I've tried different units and different types of building kind of paths, I guess you could say, like putting heavy into one thing over the other. And I've played games where I've just had a very strong culture engine from the start, other ones where I've picked it up towards the end, but I still don't know how to play well. And there's still so much to discover. So that's definitely brings me back to the game.
Yeah.
I will say the app is helping a lot for that. I would not be going back to this in a physical form from game to game at all. But the app, because you can play it solo and you can knock out a game in sort of 45 minutes to an hour, I think.
45, yeah.
Yeah, it's playable, in the morning, just a quick game kind of thing. So, and yeah, it's does all the heavy lifting for you. We haven't touched on it yet, but there is a lot to talk about with fiddliness and phasiness and all the little process we had to go through in the game. But yeah, the app helps solve a lot of that for me.
Yeah, I think there's the desire to actually master that system of like building your economy in the, I don't know, the correct way if there is one. And that definitely brings me back in terms of wanting to be like, oh man, I didn't get it this time. Next time I'm gonna upgrade, I'm gonna get enough food and enough stone at the right time so that things work out better. Never happens, but one day.
Yeah, I usually like games where you can pursue extreme strategies in terms of like your resource production and things like that. A game like First Light, you could have 20 water per round and not be generating energy or algae, which are other primary resources. And I think that is really cool. But in this game, I think there are some extreme strategies in terms of, how you do your military and things like that. But I think the puzzle to have a balanced economy is so tricky and so compelling that I don't mind that extreme strategies aren't that viable, because just getting that eco balance right is completely engaging and really tricky. And you can do these like slight tweaks on the formula. What if I go for ideas first? What if I go for iron or stone first? What if I go for food first? What is the texture of that? How does that feel different from doing the other ones first? And those little like early adjustments, seeing how they feel. But really the goal is to have it nice and balanced so that you can keep investing more and more into your economy and then eventually leveraging that economy into points and military and things like that. So yeah, I think that normally I would say if you have to have a balanced economy, it's a downside for a game because it's telling the player you must play a certain way. But I think there's so much room for slight nuanced different takes, and actually mastering that system is much harder than most games, I would say, for balancing your economy. There's another thing I want to talk about here, and that's in comparing this to what we would normally call modern Euro games or modern strategy games, where a lot of these modern games also have a lot of ways to build your engine. This game has tons of ways to build your engine. But in a generalization, a lot of the modern strategy games, you might just take an action that would, increase your production by 1 or something like that. You just take an action, simply do that. Or all of your guys that are doing this thing now do +1, right? And it would just cost you an action or something like that. Whereas in this game, there are so many steps to the process. So from a player point of view and a design point of view, it's far less efficient. You need to take far more steps to get the desired result. But I think that this leads to really interesting gameplay, because what I'm talking about is, say you're wanting to level up your stone miners into iron miners. So firstly, you're going to need to take an action to collect the iron card from the card row. And then if you've got enough ideas, then you can play the card into your own personal city, your home board, paying the ideas, and now iron is available for you. But you're not generating iron yet. You've just got the idea. You've found where the iron is, but you're not generating any of it. And now you need to take an action to upgrade a worker that was on the stone card into the iron card. But that's not all the workers that were on that card. That's just one. You're not upgrading all of them at the same time, just one. So you would take another action to upgrade another guy, and you might do that last step multiple times. And so what we have for this idea of upgrading your engine is a multi-step process, which is not super common nowadays, I would say. And from a design point of view and a player point of view, it's not efficient. It's like there's so many steps. Why do we need all these steps? But because there are so many steps, there are so many sequencing considerations for the player, which means that there is a lot of room for skill expression in how you do that sequencing and how you manage these resources. If that's going to be a 3 or 4 turn loop in order to be able to do all of that, generating the ideas, generating the resources to upgrade the people, and how you spend your resources at the end of the turn to prevent corruption, it means there's so much room for skill expression. And you end the game wondering to yourself, could I have been more efficient? And I think that multi-step process it leads the game to being more ploddy and slower, and the feedback from your actions not being quite as fast and things like that. But I think the upside of all of those sequencing considerations and room for skill expression and all that sort of stuff is really compelling to me. I actually really like that, and I don't mind that it takes a little bit longer. And it feels kind of more thematic, like going through all these steps. Those are the steps that you would have to take in order to, teach your stone miners how to, mine iron or whatever, upgrade their tools and machinery and things like that. I don't know. I just find all of that multi-step process quite compelling. What do you guys think?
Yeah, and what it does is it also makes it unclear how efficient it is to just quickly upgrade everything and spend your whole turn only upgrading from stone to iron mines, because you're like, this whole turn I'm spending to do this stuff, I'm neglecting all the other areas of my engine. And so that's when you start getting like these resource imbalances in your engine, is when you've been spending so much time trying to upgrade to your iron mining that suddenly you don't have enough food because your population's growing and you're producing less food each round. And you're like, oh no, maybe I should have upgraded to irrigation first before upgrading to iron mining, So I think this kind of multi-step process does make the kind of like, when should I upgrade this? It makes that a much more difficult question, because in most games it's like, as soon as I can upgrade tech and get like a better way of producing this resource, I just want to do it straight away. Like I want to do that. I want to rush it. I want to rush it as soon as possible. And in this game, it's not as clear like how quickly you want to rush it and which one you want to do first. And yeah, and like whether you should do it over 5 turns or whether you should do it in 1 turn. And maybe, maybe you've picked up some of those yellow cards that are helping you to do it quickly or something like that. So yeah, it does add that depth that you're right in saying, even though this game is telling you to have a balanced economy, there's so much depth in how you upgrade it.
What the small processes also does is it allows you to make lots of small mistakes, not one big one as well.
Yes.
So you might spend an action picking up a card that you plan to build and never build. Or you might, pay the science and place down your fancy new iron mine and never put a unit, never put a population on it, and it never actually functions or gives you anything in the game. So I'm sure by the end of the game, I've probably made like 10 really bad little decisions, which might equate to like 2 big bad decisions in some other game, so but you don't notice them so much. And that really adds and comes back to that whole action system we talked about earlier, where you only get these 3 actions to begin with, and it doesn't feel that bad spending one to pick up a card, but maybe that was a big snowball that just went downhill and you messed up because that one action, you then spend another action and some resources to place that card, and then did you really benefit from all that? Like, was taking another card better? And it's so hard to know which was the wrong decision. So in a way, it feels kind of forgiving, where it's kind of like you've made some bad choices, but you don't really see what they were because it's little minor mistakes here and there, but that really adds into the whole puzzle and the wrinkle and not really knowing how to master the game well.
And that's the upside of a game which says, right, on your turn, you've got 4 to 8 actions that you could do. And so you don't treasure those actions as much as you might in another game like White Castle, where the game says you've got 12 actions this whole game. You know what I mean? So you're more likely to misplay in a sense. And I think that that's quite cool. It's quite freeing for the player. But then afterwards, knowing that I could have played better, that's so exciting and compelling for me to want to play again, to try and to master that system.
That's quite an interesting point. How a game that has less actions is like, at the end of it, you're like, what else could I have done? If you've only got 10 or 12 actions in a game, probably each of those actions, you're going to be like examining every possible thing you could do. And so at the end of it, you're like, well, I've played that game, potentially. Whereas when there's all these micro actions that you just, as I said, like with the video game version, I think I was talking to you guys earlier. It's like I feel I probably even make more mistakes in the video game version than in the board game version because everything's so quick. I just end up making decisions quickly as well, which is probably a bad thing. But because there's all these micro decisions, you're kind of like, well, I've got to use like 6 actions in my turn, so let me do this and then this and then this, and that also causes you to make more mistakes because you've got so many actions, you've got to get through them. And so it leaves that room for improvement, right? So maybe we should make games with lots of micro actions, guys. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I do think that there is an upside to a game being longer. Like often games will be criticized for being longer, and it's valid. Like, people don't have time to play a game that's 3 hours or 4 hours, or they might feel like they didn't get the enjoyment that they would want to get from a game that is that long. And I totally understand that. But I think having a longer game, there is upside too, where you can take a different approach to how players take actions. And that can lead to more satisfying experiences, and it can lead to more of an epic feel as well. Like, this game definitely manages to get across a sense of progression. Like, you do feel so much stronger by the end than you do at the start. And that's because there's so many little steps that you've done over the course of your hundreds of actions, probably. And you can see the way that your city or your home board kind of builds up. And that's really cool. I do want to loop back to one topic before we move on to like the kind of our final thoughts and any other topics you guys have. And that's about gates. And I'm just interested if you guys have any kind of other explanations about why we put gates in games. And because I think that this game does it really, really well. But I'm just keen to hear your thoughts on or your own articulation of why you think gates are good in games.
I feel like we can't move on without mentioning that there's a very special gate in this game, and that is the leader, Bill Gates. You can get Bill Gates in this game.
They do. Nice. Well done.
I think gates work well, like, because often there's a thing you want to do in the game, right? There's something you want to build, something you want to achieve, and often you'll need, let's just say you need 3 things to achieve that. So in this game, it might be that you need some population, you need some resources, and you need some science. Or maybe it's the action points that you need to get the job done. So, and why gates work so well in games is that you're usually lacking in one of those things. Like, all right, I've got the food. All right, I've got the population. That's my turn. I've got no action points. Can I do that differently? Can I undo this move and do this better? And is there another option to do that? So they create just a really good system of keeping you in check constantly, where you can't just do everything you want to do, and you have to try and optimize to the point that it happens at the exact moment you hoped it would. So like that feeling of, and it's my last thing, and yes, I can do it. Boom, feels good. And that feeling of always just almost being there is also quite a good feeling, where you're like, all right, next turn I can do it. And it makes you look forward to your next turn. So whereas if it's just a free-for-all, I can do whatever I want. And I guess an example of that might be Takedo, where it's you just, every turn, you're getting 1 to 3 points. And there's no resistance, there's no gates. It's just have some points. There's no tension in a game like that. There's a little bit in that game with the race and stuff, but this game is the complete opposite of that, where there's constantly things that you need and you can't get, and you have to try and figure out a way to get those things you need.
Yeah, I know that, Shem, we've designed some prototypes, I wouldn't necessarily call them games, where there are no gates, in a sense. We end up playing this game and thinking like, my turns were kind of weird because I was allowed to do anything. And because I was allowed to do anything and I could afford anything, then I wasn't sure what I was supposed to do. And so like the lack of kind of restriction kind of means that you don't have any direction, right? There's nothing kind of that you want to do. Some of those plays of our prototypes are like, man, this is just weird. Like, what are we supposed to do? How are we supposed to restrict players? And it can sometimes be a real challenge in the game design process, thinking about restrictions that seem fair and achievable and things that you can overcome, without just being completely easy, right? And just the pushovers.
Yeah, I do have an example too. So, a couple of years ago, I did Shipwrights Redux. In the original Shipwrights, this is like one of my first games I designed, and I was very fresh. Didn't know a lot about game design, really. I was just figuring out as I was going along. But that game has a lot of gates to building your ships, much like Architects, for example. So lots of different resources are required. But that game also was very card heavy and too much luck on the cards. So one of the main gates in the game was having the craftspeople to build the ships. And so the amount of times that you would have all the workers you need, all the resources you need, but not have that one craftsman symbol, that adds frustration to the player because they don't feel in control. So gates, I always find, shouldn't be something where you just felt like you had no hope. Like, you should be able to achieve it if you can. So when I came to redo Shipwrights with Redux, I had the system where there's still 9, I think it's 9 or 7, can't quite remember, craftspeople, but every craftsperson has a slash on it. So this one could be this, or you could pay a coin to make it that. And so what that did to the game was that you never felt totally at the mercy of the card draw. There's often a way to try and achieve what you wanted. So that game still has some strong gates. The new game has strong gates for resources and for those things, but you feel like you've got far more control over them, and that if you really want to build that big Drakkar, you can. Like you can make it happen. You can start the game with that plan, and you can achieve that plan. Whereas the previous version, like, good luck. You had to try and really get.
Right.
You had to get lucky with the card draws. No one was to hate draft and that kind of thing. So
I think that's why I like resource conversion in games, where, if you've got way too many resources of a certain type, but you don't have exactly the resources that you need, you can inefficiently change some of those resources to then be able to do the thing. I feel like that is a really good system to remove some of the frustration that there can be in gates, where it's like, it's still not the most efficient way to do it. Like if someone has exactly the resources, you're way better off doing it that way. But you're saying to the player, if you really want to do it, you can. I mean, you're going to lose out, but you can, kind of thing. And I find that generally to be a really good system of removing some of that frustration. And I get frustrated in games when there isn't that. I can't remember whether it was City one where I felt like I needed more of that. I can't remember. No, that has it with the cards. But yeah, sometimes when I encounter games where there isn't that way to be like, I've got these extra resources that I don't want to do anything with. Can I like inefficiently change them to something else that I can use? I find that frustrating. So yeah, I think that's a good way to deal with those problems that there can be with gates.
Nice. I think also the whole point around it being kind of fiddly and phasey, I think a lot of games haven't emulated the whole cube system. And even though it's really, really cool and I love it in this game, it still feels kind of unique. It still feels sort of fresh, like it hasn't been copied a lot. And I think because it definitely leads to the game being longer, it definitely leads to the game requiring more steps. And so it's something that, even though it works really well, it kind of lends itself to a digital game. I don't know. I don't know if I've seen a system that is so cool and that works so well that is 10 years old, or actually more than 10 years old, that hasn't really been copied that much. And I think it's probably for good reason.
well, I have watched some of the CGE documentary videos that they released. So I think it was last year. And Vlaada, he is a computer programmer. So when he's making these games, he is actually building apps for himself to play the games. So I think it was true for this game as well. So he probably played this game a lot on the computer, like in a spreadsheet type format, or like a simple web-based app that he made for himself. So I think a lot of that filliness probably wasn't there when it was first being tested.
Right.
And then this was back in 2006 when it first came out. This is one of the CG's first games as well. And like, I think they did the first edition. I'm just going to assume they did. So back then, there were lots of fiddly games, right? Like there were a lot of games that were not that great looking. Like, we're using cubes and we love using cubes, but if this was a modern version of the game, they would not be cubes now. And there would be probably dials and all sorts of things to kind of handle this for us. But so it's definitely of its age. But yeah, I think it's funny. I think this game was probably born as mostly a digital game. Like for sure, it was
Right.
tested in person for sure. Like I'm not saying it wasn't, but I think the original design space of the game was probably in a digital format. And we've had the same thing with, say, most of the South Tigris was designed within a tabletop simulator space. So games become products of how they're kind of birthed, I think, and the restrictions
That's right.
that come from them. So this game didn't probably have the restrictions of fiddliness as a negative. So it's definitely there in the physical version. And we got the game. Me and Sam played it in person, and we're like, let's not play that again in person. It's just a lot to manage, and you feel the admin side is quite heavy on the game. You're constantly pushing cards down, and then trying not to bump the cubes on your board and all sorts of things. So, yeah, it's interesting. Like some board games are just better as apps, right? They work better. They handle all the admin for you. You can get to the fun faster. But it's a good lesson in kind of UI and stuff for games as well. So if you have a game that is feeling fiddly, like, is there a solution? Can you do this in a better way that's with less components or less admin for the player to move things around and stuff? So I think it's a good challenge for any game. Like your game might be awesome,
Yeah.
but is it too fiddly? Can you fix it? Can you change it? It's worth trying to do it, I think.
Yeah. So are we saying that if it was released for the first time today, it might not have the success that it had in the past, just because of these factors?
Well, for sure, there's a separate point there, right? Like it's very hard to stand out today because there's just more games being made. And yes, I think it would be more noticeable that it is fiddly, and it would be more noticeable that it is long. But I also think, like, I 100% agree with that question around, like, if you can try to remove some of the fiddliness from games, you should. But I also think sometimes the answer is you can't. And maybe that's just like my own kind of tastes. But sometimes fiddliness is a necessary evil for something that is cool. Like there's a really cool idea, like how the cubes and discs and stuff work in this game. I'm not sure how you would emulate that without all the fiddliness. And so in my mind, it's kind of like it's a necessary downside. It's the other side of the coin. It's this curse problem thing where you could simplify the whole systems a lot. But I think then it's a completely different game. And so I think the fiddliness is just part of making the system really cool. And some other games have this kind of thing as well, where it's like, it is fiddly, like Inventors, right? Inventors has got a lot of fiddliness, especially to the whole multi-step process of inventing, testing, building, and publishing these devices. But we wanted it to be an interactive, multi-step kind of shared infrastructure system where players can track everything they did, everything they contributed to the device. And that needed to be fiddly to be the way that it is. Now, people might say it's too fiddly for my taste. Totally understand that. Like, totally understand that. But I think that sometimes the game has to be fiddly to do the cool thing that you want it to do. And so I'm not as like down on fiddliness as just a general thing. I'm not as down on it as some people might be. But you obviously want to temper it and be aware of it and figure out if there are other ways that you can smooth up the process of playing the game for players.
I think it's kind of similar to, I don't know, like filmmaking and stuff like that. There's often like rules of like good cinema and good filmmaking, but often the greatest movies break some of those rules.
Right.
In like a knowledgeable way, like they know that they're doing it on purpose kind of thing. And maybe sometimes in game design it's the same. There's kind of like some general things which are good, but the thing is if you follow all the rules, you can end up with kind of a product that's the same as everything else, right? So maybe if there's ways to knowingly break some of the rules, but in a way that makes the game great, maybe it's worth it.
I think you'd probably call that kind of special sauce, you call it charm. Some games or some products just, for whatever reason, have a charm to them. And usually it's like, it's because it's just not good. Like there's certain things that aren't good, but for some reason I really like it. And it's like a weird palate taste type thing. Like I shouldn't like this, but for some reason it just really sits well with me. And we can't explain away why it is that way. It's just some games or some things, some products, some parts of life have this kind of charm to them. So this game definitely has some charm.
As do you.
Hey.
We hope you've enjoyed our discussion about Through the Ages, but we'd love to hear from you. Jump on the Garphill Games Discord and let us know in the podcast channel if you played it and what you thought. Are there any other examples of games you like that have a lot of micro actions? Are there any games you find too fiddly? Welcome back to our draft of the top 200 games on Board Game Geek. We have arrived at games 71 to 80, and as I repeat every time, we took screenshots of all of these categories of 10 when we first started this draft, so a lot of these games will not be the same as if you go up and look up 71 to 80 on Board Game Geek in this moment, but we're going to use our list, which I will read out to you right now. Power Grid, Harmonies, Quacks, Lands of Caledonia, Paladins of the West Kingdom, Le Havre, The Gallerist, Ticket to Ride Legacy, Legends of the West, Maracaibo, and Star Wars Imperial Assault. So this time we have Sam banning a game, then Shem will pick first, I'll pick second, and Sam will round things out.
So today I'm going to ban Ticket to Ride Legends of the West. There's so many legacy games and campaign games that one's just got to go. See you later.
You are filth.
The look on Shem's face right then was priceless. He was not expecting that at all.
I'm trying to actually find where that game was when we took that screenshot, or it is now, I should say. I think it's gone up.
I have no hate for that game, but just like, and I don't dislike legacy games as well. It just gets quite overwhelming trying to play through all your legacy games. So
yeah, that game's currently at number 70, and rightly so. For any Ticket to Ride fans, it's a fantastic game. We will sad to see it go. I will mourn for it. I had a lot of fun playing this with my family I think it was last Christmas or the Christmas before. Yeah, great game and very well implemented legacy system too. So there's just certain thing about this game for a while that's Sam banned that no one can have, and all right, moment of silence, please. No, that's yeah, it's a good game. Anyway, moving right along. What else do I have to choose from? What is this rubbish? I'm joking. I'm joking.
He's shocked.
Yeah.
But before this, he was like, "Oh, it's a really good 10 this week. There's so much to choose from." And now it's like his first pick's been banned. It's all rubbish.
Yeah. I don't want any of these games. No. All right, so there's probably two I'm going between here. And the thing is, I haven't played these games for quite a long time. So my top two would be Clans of Caledonia and Le Havre. And I have not played Le Havre in probably like, how long has it been? 15 years? Is it even that old? I don't know, 12, 15 years. Clans of Caledonia, I have played more recently, but still been quite a long time. Tough choice. I'm going to have to go purely off like nostalgic memories, thinking through my times playing the game and how much I enjoyed it. And I'm going with Le Havre. I've got to have an away game on my list, don't I? I just got to. And Le Havre, I have good fond memories of. I don't know how it stands up now against his other more modern games, but I'm sticking with that.
It's still really unique. Like, it doesn't really feel like lots of other Uwe games. And a lot of his games share DNA, but I think the action system makes the game feel quite unique. And it is a genuine engine builder, which is pretty cool.
Alrighty ho, that's me. And I'm actually torn. Like, usually I don't have that many games to pick from because I've played a lot less games than you, but right now I'm really torn between Harmonies and Quacks. Now, Quacks, I've played 2 or 3 times several years ago when I was at Sam's house actually with Sam, and I really enjoyed Quacks. It was a great time. Harmonies, I played first on BGA and was like, oh, this game, yeah, it's average. And then I played it in person and I got to build up my little ecosystem, all the kind of tactile elements to it, and I really enjoyed it. I think I'm going to go with Harmonies. I think it's a really nice little game, and I think I'd like to have it in my collection of these games that we're drafting. A nice lighter game to pull out and enjoy that tactile experience, play with people who maybe wouldn't play all the heavy Euros or, fighty games that I've already drafted. And so my pick will be Harmonies, a peaceful time.
Well, you've made the decision harder for me, not easier, because now Quacks is in play. And I wonder if I'm just supposed to take Quacks just for like balance for my list. I don't have that many light I don't know if Quacks is a party. It's kind of like party plus sort of game, and it's pretty fun, and I've definitely played it like 20 plus times, so it gets to the table a lot. Very easy to get to the table. But I do really like Power Grid. There's something special about how the auctions work in Power Grid, which is super cool, and it's not similar to any other game that I have. And then there's Clans of Caledonia. Like, that game is great, but I do have Terra Mystica. Not that they're the same at all, but they sort of are in the same play space. So I'm going to say no to Clans of Caledonia, even though I think it's fantastic. And I think I'm just going to take Power Grid. I think that the Freedom and Freeze magic is strong in that one, and the auctions are great. There's a lot of math in the game, which I don't mind. So yeah, I'm going to take Power Grid.
Crazy that Quacks has been left on the table.
Yeah, I know. That's the only game that's been left on the table. Nothing else.
I thought there was just a quiet agreement that we can't pick our own games, but
No, that was never stated in the rules, was it? I don't know.
I'm going to change my mind. No.
We'll let people assume what they want to assume. That's totally fine.
Thanks for listening to the Lens and Veil podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Garphill Games. You can follow Garphill Games on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, X, and YouTube by subscribing to our newsletter at garphill.com or by joining the Garphill Discord server. It's like Phase 10 was one of those terrible games when you go back and look at it.
Phase 10 hours? Like, seriously, come on, man. Like, what is going on with that game? It should be light. It should be fast. It's like so long.
So many old games did not respect people's time. That's the thing. There's like so much so people are so precious about playing time these days. But like all the old classics, it's just like flipping 4 hours. Yeah.